Basic Appraisal Principles, page 348. Be signed by the borrower, be delivered by the borrower, and be accepted by the lender. Mortgage provisions. Certain basic information must be included in every promissory note and mortgage, but most real estate loan agreements also include additional provisions governing default and transfer or encumbrance of the property. These common additional terms generally provide extra protection for the lender. That's not surprising. When the parties work out the details of their agreement, the lender is ordinarily in a better bargaining position than the borrower. However, there are some limits on the protective provisions a lender can impose, especially on a loan secured by residential property. Acceleration on default. There is an acceleration clause in both the promissory note and the mortgage used in virtually every real estate transaction. This clause gives the lender the right to demand immediate payment of the entire loan amount if the borrower defaults. It allows the lender to foreclose in the event that the borrower fails to make the payments as agreed on or defaults on and on any other term of the mortgage. Acceleration is a lender's option, not an automatic event. The lender decides whether to accelerate and when, after the borrower has missed one payment or 5 or 6, but the right to accelerate ends as soon as the borrower cures the default by tendering payment of the delinquent amounts or taking whatever other action is necessary. Due on sale clause. An alienation provision or due on sale clause allows the lender to accelerate the loan if the property is sold or otherwise transferred. A lender can't include a provision in the loan agreement that actually prevents the borrower from selling or transferring the security property. That would be an unreasonable restraint or alienation. Transfer of property from one person to another is generally good for commerce, so the law protects an owner's right to freely transfer property. However, lenders can use due on sale clauses to protect their interest. A due on sale clause provides that if the borrower sells or transfers any interest in the property without the lender's consent, the lender has the right to accelerate the loan and demand immediate payment in full. Due on sale clauses are routinely included in conventional loan agreements as a way of preventing unauthorized sales by loan assumption or installment sales. Mortgage covenants. A covenant is a promise to do or not to do something. Mortgage covenants are promises the mortgagor, borrower, makes to the mortgagee, lender. If the mortgagor violates any of the mortgage covenants, the mortgagee is permitted to make use of the acceleration clause and demand that the loan balance be paid in full at once. The following covenants are included in a typical mortgage. Covenant to pay property taxes. If the borrower fails to pay the property taxes, the government could foreclose on its property tax lien, which has higher priority than the lender's mortgage lien, so the borrower promises to pay the taxes on time. Page 349. Covenant not to remove or demolish. Destruction or removal of buildings or improvements on the mortgage property could result in loss in value that jeopardizes the lender's investment. Thus, the borrower promises not to remove or demolish buildings or other improvements without first securing the lender's permission. Covenant to insure. The borrower promises to carry adequate hazard insurance on the property to protect the lender from mortgage damage due to fire or other perils. Covenant of good repair. If the property is not properly maintained, its value can decline, thus posing a risk to the lender. The borrower promises not to commit waste on the property, or to otherwise permit its deterioration. The lender is allowed to make periodic inspections to be sure the borrower is keeping the property in good repair. Mortgage satisfaction or assumption. Once a mortgage has been given on property, it must be paid off by the mortgagor, or else assumed by a new party. When a mortgage is paid in full, it is said to be satisfied or defeated. If the mortgage is assumed by a new party, the new party takes over the obligation of making the payments on the mortgage. Satisfaction. After a mortgage debt has been paid in full, a document called a satisfaction of mortgage is used to release the mortgage lien. The lender is required to deliver the satisfaction document to the borrower when full payment has been made. The mortgage will not be released as a lien of record until the satisfaction is recorded by the borrower. Assumption. An assumption of mortgage occurs when the borrower sells the property to someone who agrees to take over the remaining balance subject to the existing mortgage. After the assumption, the new borrower becomes primarily liable, and the original borrower retains secondary liability in the event of default. This type of assumption is an assignment of the mortgage contract. If the original borrower wishes to be relieved of any liability whatsoever, the lender may permit a substitution of liability, called a novation, on approval of the new borrower's credit and financial status. The lender will usually expect to be compensated for this substitution in the form of an assumption fee or an increase in the interest rate on the loan, or both. Any mortgage that does not have a due on sale clause can be assumed. If there is a due on sale clause, assumption is only allowed if the lender consents to it. A buyer who purchases a property with an existing loan but takes title subject to the loan instead of assuming it has no liability for payment to the lender. The seller remains primarily liable for the loan, of course. The buyer is liable to the seller for payment. Mortgage foreclosure. The purpose of a mortgage is to give the lender the right to foreclose, to have the property sold and the debt paid out of the sale proceeds. Extra notes. County clerk's office will tell you, and it's like kind of close to the word assumption. Look to scoop up VA loans for investing in real estate. Extra note.